All right, good morning. If we could get ready to go, I'll give everybody about 30 seconds. Oh, they're bringing the gavel up. Okay, she is. All right. Yeah, we do. All right, everybody, let's call this Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board meeting to order, our March 9 meeting. And as our first order of business, as always, we need to establish a quorum. So if I could ask Andy and the team to establish that for us.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. We'll start with folks that are in the room. Mayor Sharon Thompson, City of Fountain, Trustee Glenn Tavenar, Palmer Lake, Councilmember Nancy Hensham, City of Colorado Springs, Councilmember Nancy Fortune, Manitou Springs, welcome, sitting in today for Mayor John Graham. Councilmember Dave Donaldson, City of Colorado Springs, Mayor Pro Tem Roland Gardine from the town of Callahan, Mayor Don Wilson, town of Monument, and obviously our chair. We've got a quorum just within the room. Online, I see Councilmember Yolanda Avila, City of Colorado Springs, Commissioner Dick Gelsner, Park County, Council Member Robert Zulawaga, City of Woodland Park. Any other board members online? I lost count, but we easily have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll state that we've got a quorum there, and thank you for that. And do we have any introductions that we need to give for anybody that's new in the meeting today? I think
yeah, my name's Jeff Mosier. I'm the Special Projects Director appointed by the City of Cripple Creek.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
And the town of Palmer Lake has a new citizen at large.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Is she here?
She is.
Oh, there she is. Okay. Good morning. All right, great. Anybody else? All right, very good. What I'd like to do is actually before we go to item number 2, the agenda approval, just I have a quick request and want to poll the board to see if everybody is comfortable with this because there's a couple of meeting conflicts. After we go through our action items and vote, I have a request if we could move the legislative report up to right after the action items. And this is for Sharon Thompson so that she can head off to another meeting. She'd like to be able to hear that. So whenever anybody makes a request for a change on the agenda, I do ask the board if there's any objections, and are there any objections to moving that up right after action items, but before item number 6? All right, hearing none. Andy, you might want to just make sure that your staff's ready for that. We've got a few minutes, obviously, to get ready for it. All right. And then the one last point that I would like to make before we go to agenda approval, I know we will get to a conversation about it, but I just specifically want to state my gratitude and thanks to the board members and to the staff for a fantastic legislative breakfast last week. We had great participation from our board. We had great participation from our delegation, and we had some really awesome conversations. And then even the post-meeting stuff. I thought it was great that we were recognized in both the House and Senate while we were present in those rooms, and also even got to sit on the Senate floor while they were deliberating and voting. And I thought that was just really awesome. The whole day I thought was great. So I just want to thank the team for putting that together and creating such a great event for us. And I can tell you that some of our delegation definitely said to me while we were up there, oh boy, you guys, we know you are here. And we think most of the House and Senate knows that PPACG is on the map and doing its job and being engaged. So I really do feel like we're having an impact and our voices being heard. And those are very important things because we're doing that for our communities. So I just want to express my gratitude to the team for that and to the board and to our delegation.
Yeah.
So
super.
thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one quick observation. We're getting roped in and helping to craft legislative updates around things like the senior homestead exemption. Jody Barker got pulled in to have conversations with the Senate members and draft writers on things like that. So definitely our voice is being heard. So I appreciate the board turnout there. That was fantastic. And I think we had 9 members of our delegation there. So good work. We're moving the ball forward.
We're really moving the ball. That's the way it felt to me. And I'm hopeful that everybody else that participated felt the same way. Excellent. All right, let's move on then to item number 2, the agenda approval. Are there any questions or comments from any of the members of the board regarding the agenda before I ask for a motion? All right, hearing none, I'll take a motion on agenda.
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
And that's been moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, we move on to item number 3 and the agenda is approved. Item number 3, public comments and presentations. Do we have anybody in the audience here that wishes to make public comment for any items not on the agenda? Seeing none in the audience, is there anybody online? All right, hearing none, let's move on to the consent items, item number 4. And as you all know, these will be acted upon as a whole. Let me just ask the board if there are any questions or comments with any of the consent items 4A through 4D. All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with a vote. Do need a motion. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And that's been moved and seconded. Yes, please.
Quick note, if you guys can state your names and making the motions, otherwise we can't catch those. So if you'll just let me know who those were.
It's Nancy Hingham moving in favor.
Oh, come on. Don't you just have intuition and you can just, from the sound of the voice, get it? Just kidding. Thank you for that comment. I appreciate it. It's always important to make sure we have the right name for the motion in the second. Okay, any last comments or questions from any members of the board? Yeah. Raleigh. Okay, thank you. He's looking at us like I did, but I think you can.
We had a tie.
It's good. Thank you. All right. Again, any last questions or comments on the consent calendar? Hearing none, we do have a motion and a second. Let's proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And are there any opposed?
Nope.
All right, hearing none, that passes as well. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the action items number 5. And our first one is 5A. And Andy, you're up, or whoever you want to bring up. Okay, John, thank you.
Mr. Board.
Mr. Board.
Wow. Be a long day. Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Items 5A and 5B. We're actually going to ask to pull those items, but we did want to give you a little bit of what the items are, why we're pulling them, and what you'll see when they come back. So hopefully we'll go from maybe a 20-minute item. Hopefully we can condense it down and be out of here pretty quick. The first item that you were going to look at, and again, far be it for me to tell you what to do, but we're recommending you don't take action on this item today, but you certainly can if you'd like, is the transit 10-year plan. If you recall last month, we brought the 10-year plan, both the roadway and the transit element. You approved the roadway element, and then the transit, we had some last minute changes. So that item was sent back to TAC. The item went back to TAC. The TAC looked at it. We did add an additional item. I believe it was the Fountain bus stops on the unfunded list. So that there was a change in the overall project list. But then we were all set and it moved forward. And then Rich, I'll call on you here in a second. We found out yesterday that there, and maybe it was before that, but I think it was yesterday, that there was going to be another change to the overall fiscal constraint. So this item sets the stage for the next item. And the next item is really the one that needs to be pulled because the funding amounts have changed where the line's going to be. But we thought it was ultra confusing to sort of come in here and say, okay, well, we had these two things here and we separated one out now, and the one thing's going to come over here. And so we want you to act on it. It just got too confusing. So the best thing to do, I think, is for us to take a step back.
I'm off, right?
And
Yes. Because it helps me
ask to
to
remove
look at
these
them,
items or table them till next month. But again, what this particular item will be is that a 10-year plan. And is this the one that has the maps, or is it the next one? And real quickly, when we came to you guys last month, you asked for some maps. Can you scroll down a little bit? So we did make an attempt to map the projects, and that was in your packet. There we go. So those things that are mappable, we've done our best to map them and do them in such a way that it made sense, so you can visually see what you'll be acting on. And so again, these maps will be updated for that. With your permission, Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and sort of touch on 5B real quick, and then I'll ask Rich to sort of touch on some stuff, and then we'll open it up to any sort of questions.
Very good. Go
So,
ahead.
and then 5B was actually the fiscal constraint part of this, where we took the whole universe of projects that were in the 10-year plan, and we moved it down to those that were funded in the first 4 years and the sort of the on-deck ones. So we moved from a transit list and a roadway list that were 2 or 3 pages long each, down to a single page that had both transit and roadway on it. And again, because the transit number may be changing after Transportation Commission action, that's why we're pulling it. So where we're at today is take a look at it, make sure you're happy with the maps and everything. We will take this back to the TAC. TAC meets next Thursday. So whether or not we're going to be able to get all the information and have it be this Thursday with the TAC, or whether or not it'll be a future meeting with the TAC, it'll go back through that TAC process and eventually make its way back to you with all of the sort of the bits and pieces of the overall 10-year plan, the transit part, which you still need to adopt, as well as sort of that funding piece. So with that, I've done my best to sort of quickly give you an overview so you're not surprised when these things come back next month. But Rich, did I sort of gloss over anything? Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you did a good job explaining things. I just wanted to mention, the reason we are taking a step back is at the statewide level, we're looking at the transit list and actually how we fund O&M on a statewide basis for all of the services that Cdot provides. So the bus staying, the outrider services, those kinds of things. And so that conversation has been ongoing. I was in my first meeting about yesterday afternoon, about 2 o'clock. I called John about 3 o'clock and we talked about it. So basically, this topic's going to be discussed at STAC on Friday, and as well as with Transportation Commission next week. Hopefully, we'll have a better idea of what taking those O&M operating costs off the top does from a statewide perspective, and then what Region 2 sees as our allocation for the transit portion of the fund. So that's really the reason we're taking a step back right now, because it's likely to change and go down, quite frankly. So
Thank you. Sharon, go ahead.
I guess I'm a little confused because last month when I asked to have this pulled off, 2 people from, I don't know if they were from CDOT, they were on the Zoom, so it's kind of hard to tell, spoke up and were very adamant that you had to deal with this issue next month because it had to stay in the process and it had to, right? And so we were all prepared for that. So I guess it's just a little confusing that everybody was so adamant a month ago that we had to deal with it all this month, where it's basically screw up the entire world. And now we're being told to pull it off.
yeah, and I apologize for that, Mayor. Really, it is basically a larger view change in direction at the statewide level that's affecting this. The initial plan, we thought we were solid in terms of the numbers and trying to get everything finalized. So, I did mention that this is going to impact our ability to get a 10-year plan adopted and finalized at the originally desired timeframes. And I think everybody understood that. So this is a change in direction at the statewide level.
Okay, so can you restate that again so I make sure I understand? Can you
So-
restate that again so I make sure I understand it?
So basically, at the last meeting we had, we thought we had pretty clear direction in terms of what our control totals were going to be from a planning perspective. But there's been a change now at the policy level, at the statewide level, that's going to affect those totals. So they are going to change. I was just made aware of this yesterday afternoon. All the region directors statewide were made aware of it yesterday afternoon. And so it is going to impact the schedule. We are going to have to slow down in terms of getting our 10-year plan formally adopted through Transportation Commission.
So when you tell somebody you want them to slow down, it normally means you're going to get less money.
Likely it is going to result in less money. I think that's a fair expectation, because essentially what is being proposed is to take the operating and maintenance costs off the top of the 10% transit portion And then what's remaining is allocated by the formula. That's essentially what's being proposed and will be discussed at STAC tomorrow.
Okay, state that again, please.
So we've set aside essentially 10% of the funds for transit at the statewide level. Previously, they had allocated those funds out by the formula, the midpoint RPP formula. That direction has changed now. So now instead of doing that, they are going to take O&M costs for busting, outrider services and various other elements, O&M costs for mobility hubs off the top of that 10%, and then allocate the remaining portion by formula.
So multimodal is going to take priority over fixing our roads?
No, it's still the same 10% amount of money that's going to overall to transit. It's just basically the O&M costs were never actually previously taken off the top. So they're looking at a long-term sustainable funding source for the operation and maintenance of the rolling fleet and for the facilities.
So
And
when
so
I,
the
when
10
I
out of
hear
the-
that, what I hear is they're in the red more than we anticipated them to be, and we need to find money from somewhere else to keep them viable.
No, that's not necessarily, I don't think the case.
If I might, I'll make the point again. I think it's appropriate to get a full explanation from you, but it might actually be the reverse, because if it was 10% for transit projects and O&M was not in that 10%, that meant you had O&M somewhere else in the total budget. So now you're taking whatever budget line you had for O&M and you're putting it into the 10%, which means one of two things. Either you never had the money in the previous O&M line, or that money in the previous O&M line now is going to get allocated somewhere else. So when it was not in the 10%, you had O&M somewhere. So it could have been just an honest error. Maybe you didn't have an O&M line, or it could have been you had it in another line and now that money's getting allocated elsewhere. So do you have an answer to that question?
I don't have an exact clear answer. My understanding, and again, this is going to be talked about at STAC tomorrow as well. So there's going to be opportunities to ask the experts.
On Friday. but-
On Friday, I'm sorry, not tomorrow. Lost track of days of the week, but my understanding, I think, is we hadn't carefully considered the O&M as carefully as we probably should have in the past, and we're trying to rectify that now going forward.
Okay. So, but if it might be along these lines, and you just tell me if this sounds wrong. There was 10% allocated on these funds for transit, and now you're changing the O&M amount in that 10%. Can I imagine? Can I ask if the same situation is happening with the road on the roadside? You may or may not have sufficiently planned on the O&M on the roads. Therefore, that's also being added into the road side of the budget. I mean, is it kind of a universal thing, or was it just in the transit area that O&M was overlooked?
It is in the transit area only, so it's not going to affect the capital project side
Okay.
of the plan.
So it sounds like it was maybe O&M wasn't not sufficiently addressed somehow, some way on the transit side only.
Correct.
And you're working on getting it added. And I think what that means is it'll mean less capital investment on transit, but more sustainability on running what we already have.
Correct.
Is that what that means? Okay. So we'll just have to decide if we're comfortable with that or not.
Well, I don't know if it matters or not, if we're comfortable with it, if it's been made a policy decision.
Well,
it is what it is.
And again, it's still a draft policy decision. So again, it needs to still be talked about through STAC and through the Transportation Commission. So STAC is on Friday, Transportation Commission is next week. But having PPACG adopt their transit plan when the numbers could change, really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And that's why we decided to pull the agenda item this month.
Right.
Andy, can we reach out to Lisa Hickey before they have their meeting and see if we can understand this a little bit better? And
We have a call with her first.
Sure, we have a meeting. John and I will meet with her tomorrow. I was checking to see if she's online for the meeting today and I don't see her, but yeah, definitely we will chat with her about this tomorrow. and
10%
express
off the top
concern.
doesn't sound like a lot of money, but
Mhm.
to some of these smaller transit providers, 10% out for their budget is a considerable amount of money.
Sure.
Well, just to be clear, the direction isn't 10% of the transit money off the top for O&M. So
Mhm.
we had an entire pot of money, 90% going to roadway investment, essentially 10% going to transit. Now the 10%, the total of that 10%, say it's $100 million. we evaluated O&M costs for our rolling fleet, all those different things to support the transit services that CDOT provides. And we're taking that amount out of that $100 million, and what's remaining will be allocated by formula.
And what do you consider a rolling fleet?
So it's our Mustang buses, you know, any of those kinds of things, any of the maintenance facilities that are required, maintenance on transit hubs that will support Mustang. So the parking areas, those kinds of things are what comes out of that O&M cost.
The vans?
Yes.
The van pools?
Okay, Mr. Donaldson, you had your hand raised?
Question. Do you have a rough idea of that 10%? What percentage of that will now be consumed by O&M? Is it?
They're still looking at the numbers. We raised some questions in the meeting yesterday, so I'm really not comfortable saying that right now.
What was it previously? Do you know what it was last year?
I do not.
Thanks.
Well, on the bright side of that, if there was something that wasn't sufficiently concluded in the budgeting, it does need to go through a stakeholdering process, and you're asking that process to take place before we vote on it. And that's important. That'll give everybody an opportunity to express their support or objection or ask for modification or what have you. And that'll go through the standard stakeholdering process. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. All right. So with that in mind, then for items items 5A and 5B, we have a proposal from the staff here to pull those for a future date uncertain. Okay. Is there, since we don't have a future certain date, I don't think, you know, our practice in the county is we would ask for a vote to go to a future date certain, but since we don't have a certain date, I think we can just see if there's a consensus about pulling it.
And,
Yes,
and we
please.
can table this till next month, and then next month, if it's not an action item, it can certainly come back as information, because we'd be able to report as to what happened at the STAC meeting as well as the Transportation Commission meeting. So yeah, to put a finer point on this, right, before, for those of you who are in the military, right, the general says, I want that trench over there and dig it, and you're like, well, no, that doesn't make sense. There's water lines there. We don't want to, that's my problem. It's your problem. And so you go and you start digging. All of a sudden they say, yeah, General, we're going to have to turn off the water to your latrine because we're interrupting the service. Wait a minute, that's ridiculous. Why do that? Right. So when it was our problem, we had to move as fast as possible. When it became Denver's problem, all of a sudden they realized, oh, well, we need to sort of take a step back. So that's sort of, I don't need to be as politically correct as others. So that's sort of where we're at on this. We have to do our own internal due diligence because again, we have a lot of questions as to why this moves forward. While we do have a great relationship with Cdot, we certainly don't take everything that we're told at face value. And we do have some questions that will be asked at the staff meeting.
Okay.
So if you'd like to just table this to next month, you'll either come back as an information item telling you what we've found out because we found out yesterday, or if you want to just make it a date uncertain, that's certainly up to you, Mr. Chair, and the members of the board.
Thank you. Well, John, I have to admit, I'm not sure how your story exactly relates to this, but they're always entertaining. They're always entertaining.
You
So,
guys got it right. Never mind.
but with that in mind, is there any objection from any members of the board that these two items get tabled and either an information or possibly a vote decision next month? Is there any objection? And Mayor, if you have any comments
No,
before?
I'm just going to make a motion to table it.
Okay.
And ask Andy if he wants a date to table it to, or
I like the idea of bringing it back next month. We'll know more, obviously, with the conversations we'll have over the coming weeks. So table it till April.
I make a motion that we table action item 5A and 5B until next month, and staff will decide if it needs to be brought back as an informational or voting item.
Dave Donaldson, I second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Any last comments or questions from any of the board members regarding that motion and the items? Yeah, all right. All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? All right, so those are tabled to next month for either information or vote. Let's move on to 5C.
Super. Thank you. And they're all warmed up for Danelle now. Danelle Miller, she's going to present the tip amendment.
Yes, good morning. I'm Danelle Miller. I'm a senior transportation planner here at PPACG. Today, we have a tip amendment to the FY fiscal year 2022, 2025 Transportation Improvement Program. We kind of grouped several projects together here. So we have several different reasons why these are being either added to or adjusted in the tip. The first two projects are the distribution of unused funding for two existing projects. These were taken through a TAC workshop, and Arnold Avenue Bridge replacement in El Paso County, and the Jackson Creek Parkway expansion and monument were chosen to receive those funds. The following project is a PPACG request to use toll credits for the development of a regional freight study. Following that, we have three transit projects where Mountain Metro Transit was awarded funding for those projects. There are also adjustments to MMT allocations for 4 projects, and I believe Brian Vituli is on the phone today in case there are any questions regarding those. And then finally, there are a few project changes that are regional priority pool funding changes requested by Cdot. And we have Shane Ferguson and Rob Fry here in the room to answer questions on those.
All right, thank you. There's a fair number of changes in here. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to review, and if anybody has any questions, we definitely, I think, want to bring those up, make sure that we're in a good place with these or not. Did I see a hand up? Yes.
Yes,
Nancy,
this
go
is
ahead.
Nancy Henjum. I would love some description on the US 24 West over Ridge Road project. I think it's on the second page of projects. They're not numbered, but it's about midway down that second page, on page 21, I guess. It is. Sorry, on page 21, I think it is. About midway down, there's a project of US 24 West over Ridge Road.
And Shane will answer that.
Good morning. So the project for US 24 over Ridge Road, that's part of the PEL, or I'm sorry, the EA that was completed on US 24 West back in 2014. This is, I would say, the first real project out of that environmental assessment that is going to be worked on for work towards completion of those improvements along that EA, along that corridor. So the work itself, or the funding itself, is for design currently for the design phase of this project. The project is US 24 over Ridge Road. So essentially is a bridge over Ridge Road area. It's not a ramp system, so it's not an interchange. And so it provides access north and south at Ridge Road underneath US 24. And those familiar with the area, Red Rocks is to the south. There's a lot of walking and pedestrian movements from the north to the south. So this is really kind of that first project in that environmental assessment that we're moving towards.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And, I think I've had a conversation with the staff about this one before, because I originally had a question, and I'm very, very interested in grade separation on 24 between Manitou Springs and downtown Colorado Springs, because the road really backs up there, particularly in the summer. And anybody that drives that road knows what I'm talking about. So then the first question for me was, why Ridge Road over all the other interchanges? Why are we starting with this, right? Because that, to me, is one of the least busy of the interchanges there. So it would seem to me like the priority would be grade separation design for one of the others. So this is how it was explained to me. First of all, I think we had used some federal money and done some studies, and I forget what the study was, but they have an expectation that we act on the outcome of that study. And we're a couple years or something to this effect since we've done that. So we got to start moving forward on some work. This is going to be one of the less expensive ones, and therefore the possibility of it going forward is a higher probability as opposed to the other interchanges, which could be 30 or 40 million. And then the other interesting point that I had not thought of was, because the Red Rocks parking is on some days not sufficient for everybody that wants to hike in there. They're parking on the north side of 24, and then they're running across the highway, and we get some people killed from time to time. So there's another priority in here, which is a pedestrian safety issue. So I get it. I kind of wish we would be able to put together, the funding and the initiatives for some of those other interchanges where the cars really back up. But when you kind of understand the context, it seems like, okay, it's better to have that than have nothing. It helps us in our relationship with the feds. And it's plausible. Obviously no guarantees, but it's plausible that because of the dollars associated with this interchange, that Cdot could get around to getting it funded for us. So does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And as long as I have the floor, if I could ask Mr.
Please.
Vituli, if he's online, to just explain a little bit more about, for this group, the the Metro Transit Center downtown and some of the electrification study, or just if you could speak to that electrification piece as well, Ryan.
Sure. Good morning, Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metro Transit. I'm the planning supervisor. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting news with regards to transit. We did announce a new location for our new downtown transit center. It will be a joint project, a public-private partnership between Mountain Metro Transit, our city enterprise parking division, and Norwood Development Group. So it will be a multi-use development, transit down below, parking up above, and then to be determined some combination of hotel space, residential space, office space, retail space. So so that's very exciting. The location will be north of Pikes Peak, in between Nevada and Denver. So just north of the post office, and kitty corner to our existing downtown transit terminal. So this is going to be a monumental achievement for us. We've been trying to do this for over 2 decades and numerous attempts. So we're glad to finally reach this milestone. And the other item that's noted in here, we did receive a grant from the state to do a zero emission vehicle transition plan. So this will carry on from our existing battery electric bus assessment. But pretty much just identify our existing operations. We do have 4 battery electric buses that we're getting ready to put into service. But this transition plan will identify and kind of guide us in our future direction for zero emission vehicles, whether it's moving forward with battery electric buses or electric diesel hybrids or hydrogen fuel cells, something like that. We'll be looking at all the available technologies and determining which way to go in the future.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. And if I could maybe ask one additional question about that. So appreciate identifying it. I did pull up a map here, and I think I want to make sure I know exactly where this is. So I see the U.S. Post Office on the corner of Nevada and Pikes Peak. You said it was north of that. And is it?
You know where City Hall is. It's the block immediately south of City Hall.
And that's where City Rock is.
It's
right?
it's on the south side of City Rock. So it's half of that block essentially. It's where the
Okay, so south of City Rock is Mountain Chalet, and then it's south of Mountain Chalet.
It's south of Mountain Chalet. So that basically that second half of the block is essentially
where
a
I think there's
parking
some
lot.
roads, and is it like street level parking there now or something?
Yeah,
It's just
there
street
is-
parking lot. It's
Yeah.
it's just a parking lot.
So
Surface-
that'll be
surface
converted
parking.
to a multi-story with
Multi-story.
transit on the first floor.
Yep.
And then because you already do have a Metro downtown bus terminal, which was mentioned was kind of candy corner across, what's the interface between the current one and this new one?
I asked that very question from our dais last week, Stan, and it's not determined at this point what's going to happen with that property once the new transit center is set up. It may stay as parking for a while, and Brian can probably speak more to that, but I don't think that's fully determined how that current property will be.
Would it be
used.
something along the lines of both would continue to operate, or is the old one, is
I'll
the
let-
intention to close down the old one?
I think the intention is to close it down, but I think
Okay.
Brian should probably speak to that.
Yeah, it is a as Councilmember Henjum said, it is a city parking enterprise property. You know, we lease the space from the parking enterprise to operate our current downtown transit terminal. So it will be a city decision, city parking enterprise decision on how to repurpose that property. But, you know, it has been noted, it is a fairly old structure and, you know, I believe it could use some money to upgrade it and maintain it. So I think that will probably factor into what to do with that building in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the explanation because now I have in my head exactly where this new
And there is a
location
nice
is.
presentation of what it'll look like that you certainly could look at, Stan, if you want to see it more.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think it'd be maybe great to get that to the board here,
I
get
think
that
so, yeah.
presentation to the board here so that we can all see it. Okay, that's super. Sorry? Okay, so are there any other questions for item 5C on the tip amendment, amendment number 3? All right, I don't see any hands raised online as well, so I'll entertain a motion.
Don Wilson, motion to approve.
And we have a motion
Nancy Henjum, a second.
and we have a second. Any last opportunity for any questions from any of the board members before we vote? And seeing none, let's go ahead and proceed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, thank you very much. 5C passes. Let us move on to 5D.
Okay, legislative update. And I think Jessica McMullen is going to kick it off. And we've got our two co-chairs here, Sharon and Dick.
Good morning, everyone. Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager. So as you know, it's legislative session, also known as crazy season. And the Legislative Committee has been meeting every Monday at 8:30 to go over new bills as they're proposed. And in some cases to take a look at some of the positions that we have taken and review those. In your packet, you have all of the bills that had been reviewed as of February 28th. And there has, at that time, when we sent them out, we did actually have a request to take a look at 2 of our positions and discuss those with the board. Both bills were already killed. So we did not feel like we needed to do that. Of those proposed positions, there is actually one change to the ones in your packet, and that's House Bill 22-1219. That's the Veterans Resource Information. We had set that as monitor. It has been amended and is now being supported by a variety of other folks. And so we have moved from monitor to support with amendments. And that bill, again, is very useful. Other than that, does anyone have any questions or my committee chairs want to add anything?
Well, do a quick question. You do have it under the action items, so that normally means that you are asking us to take some kind of action as a board. What is that action?
So the action we are requesting is that you move to confirm the proposed legislative positions, and I would amend that to confirm the proposed legislative positions and the
And then the change on 1219?
yeah, and the
Okay.
change from 1219 from monitor to support.
All right, very good. Are there any questions from the board? And hopefully people have pretty good understandings of these. And but if you don't, or you have any questions, now's the time to ask. And keep in mind, you can always go to the legislative meetings as well and learn a whole lot more when you're in those, involved with those. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Roland Gardine. On our roundtable, man, they said they killed the senior benefits package.
The senior homestead exemption, there have actually been several of those proposed and postponed indefinitely or continuing to be rescheduled at this time. So yeah, the one that's already that we had already taken a position on, and I'm sorry, I don't have its number right in front of me, had already been postponed indefinitely, but our legislators are already currently looking at what they can bring back this year. So Jody attended our legislative breakfast and had some great conversations.
I think it was Senator Lundeen or Liston.
And Liston, both.
Senator Liston carried that bill. he can bring it back is under similar title this year, but to get it out of the Senate is going to require a 2/3 vote. And that's the rule after something has died. So that's kind of a steep climb. So I think we need to stay on top of that. What it would do was basically, I believe this is the one that was going to do two things. It was going to raise the price of, right now it's up to the first $200,000 on their home that they can take the tax deduction on. We're trying to get that raised to 400,000 with the way the housing prices have gone up. And then also that make it portable so they can move. Right now they're stuck in their home. It kind of affects the natural flow of people downsizing, for people with the younger families wanting to move to a bigger home and they need to sell it and they can't, so we need to make that portable. So Jody has already spoken with them and they have all his information for working on that bill. So that is really exciting. And to me, I was so excited to ride home with the star of the day. And he was just on deck and it was really exciting to see him. And I would just like to do a quick shout out to Representative Bradfield and Senator Gardner, who are the two that got us introduced in the different houses. And I've already reached out and said, okay, we need to upgrade it next year. We want photos on the balcony next year. And so that's already in the works. So
excellent.
If I may.
Well, Jody,
in that
Jody, if you wouldn't mind, I just want to make sure if Mayor Wilson, if you had a question, I thought you had your hand raised. And it'd be great to hear if you have any comments or questions before Jody responds, so he can cover your question as well.
No, I was just going to comment on what bill that was. That was Senate Bill 22-093.
Okay, thank you very much. All
And
right,
that
go
is,
ahead.
yes, sir. And that is the one Senator Liston is bringing that back, posting it as a late bill. And that is the meeting that I've been asked to join next Tuesday, the 15th, in the rewrite committee. And so there'll be a variety of assessor's office as well as other interested parties to provide input to that rewrite.
And I have some questions about it. So if it comes in as a late bill, it requires 2/3 vote. Did I hear that correctly? So that's the higher bar. And are they what are they contemplating as far as modifying it? I mean, if we can't get it raised from 200 to 400, it sure would be nice to have the portability. So, is there maybe an increased chance of this bill passing if they just take a subset of the total request, or
That
do you
I
know?
don't know. Mayor Thompson summarized the updates that they were intending very well. So I don't know anything more than that at this point.
Yeah, I it's something that I've contemplated. And it might be worthwhile, maybe offering this as a proposal to our delegation that intends on continuing to fight. If we can't get all of it, could we get at least the portability? Because that's the real issue. And I think that's the real key issue about more efficient use of the housing that we have.
I think they're both vitally important because, we've already heard reports of seniors with the housing prices increase that they may not be able to stay in their homes because of the difference in the tax value. So that's part of the homeless issue, is keeping people in their homes. And so I think we really need to be prepared to fight for both. This is not, again, a partisan issue. This is a people issue. And so things cannot be like this, cannot be dying on partisan lines. So anybody, of their outreach, please ask them to bring it back.
Please go ahead.
I thought that they already boiled it down to just those two issues. So I think when they're two real key issues, especially in my area. Okay, so that's why I'm really checking it out.
And don't misunderstand my point. I'm very interested in both of those, but in the interest of getting anything, I'd rather, work towards a compromise and possibly get at least some of it, rather than go down the path of getting nothing again, which has been going on for years. So, thank you for the comments, everybody. I see Dick Elsner has his hand raised. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the issues about it is, of course, the homestead exemption is in the Constitution. The only thing is it doesn't require it to be funded. In the task force on tax policy, it was one of the first items. In fact, I think it was the first one we took up. We took testimony on it back in the summer. And one of the main things that seems to hang up a lot of the trying to do something about it is there's a good portion of people that want to have it means tested, which can't be done the way it's set up in the Constitution. So that's where you're getting a lot of the pushback is, they don't want people that have a 500,000 or not 500,000 anymore, but $1.5 million, $2 million house. They say, well, if they have that big of a house, they really shouldn't need the exemption. So there's that issue. And then the question of portability also falls into the way it was originally written and whether the legislature has the ability to do that or not. I kind of think they do, but it'll be interesting to see. They do have the ability to raise the amount because that can be set by the legislature. So I think that is one of the big things that we need to push. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe if I could just ask for clarification, Commissioner Elsner, you may have hinted at this, or I may just be misinterpreting. You're saying that it might be easier to get the exemption amount raised as opposed to getting the portability. So the exemption amount increase might be the more possible approach.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that insight. Appreciate that. So the tougher one to try to convince sufficient number of House reps and senators is the portability.
Yeah, one of the excuse me.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the issues they bring up is they say that, while people want to have it portable because they're downsizing, they're buying a smaller house. Well, I can't remember, it was one of the representatives or someone else that was testifying in front of our committee made the comment that, well, if they're downsizing, they should end up with a good chunk of money because they're taking an expensive house and buying a smaller house. So they should have some money left over. So they really don't need to have that exemption.
I mean, I appreciate that comment. I'm certain that point was made, but it might be they're downsizing because they can no longer afford the big house.
Yeah.
And therefore they're in a critically dangerous position and they need to get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please
And
go ahead. Oh, hang on.
that is the case. And then they talked about, well, we want to means test it. And someone said, well, what do you do if you means test it? Because the Constitution doesn't allow you to do that. You either get it or you don't get it. So they said, well, they could take what the constitutional portion of it, that is the homestead exemption, and take it down to zero, and then provide the money as a tax credit against your income tax. So that way you could get it, through that, and it would be tied to your income taxes. Well, I pointed out at that time that there's a lot of people that aren't paying income tax that are in these situations. If you're on Social Security, you don't pay any income tax. So how are you going to give them a credit?
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, trustee.
This is more for Doug, just kind of on that line. In Tri-Lake, oh, sorry. Doug, more so in Tri-Lakes and in Palmer Lake especially, our population, while it's starting to kind of regentrify, is primarily senior citizens. And with 22% increase in Tri-Lakes right now in home prices, our home values are literally going up in Tri-Lakes every 3 months. Examples of average price point, 2 months ago was $439 for an average home sale. Average home sale is tipping $725 right now in Palmer Lake. We are averaging $341 price per square foot. Our senior citizens cannot afford the property taxes, and they're people that have lived there forever, that have homesteaded into Palmer Lake, that have been there for 100 years, that have inherited their family homes. And when we look at that, we are the lowest property taxes in the top 10 in the country, and our budgets are still coming up low, and we've got numerous really expensive subdivisions trying to dissect and deselect from Palmer Lake and go county. It's like, how are we supposed to make money and help these people? I mean, something has to give, especially in Tri-Lakes, because our property values are just shooting through the roof.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. I mean, that therein lies another example of really the criticality of this. And, what I can see here, Andy, a huge amount of interest on the board. I just would like to make the point, is there anything else we can do as a board to make one last big gigantic push? And maybe that's us calling senators and representatives that are not from our region, because most of the ones in our region support it. Maybe we start calling them from other regions, but I don't know. I think we've got a sentiment here on this board to help try one more big last push on this.
I think clearly, and especially since you've adopted this as one of the top 3 priorities initiatives for this year, dealing with senior affordable housing. I know you've already gotten a support level. Maybe this is more active support, and we start building some more support in the Denver metro area and other parts of the state to try to rope in some overall legislative support. I was going to mention that same thing on 2 other bills we'll talk about here in a second around the visitation rights for seniors in long-term care facilities, that you might want to move that to more active support as well.
But when you talk about, Andy, with senior citizens, especially with the housing crisis right now, the things as a real estate broker that I hear all the time, okay? I hear, well, your house is worth $1 million now, take a credit line, do this, do that. We're talking senior citizens that have no income, that haven't had income in 20 years, that aren't quite 80 yet, that can't take the senior exemption yet. They can't refi, they can't take credits. I mean, and Tri-Lakes is going up more than any other neighborhood in Colorado Springs. As everybody knows, the further north you get, the higher home prices are. And it is critical for our citizens of Palmer Lake right now.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, Jessica, what have we taken like intense action before that we can draw from experience? Like, is there something you could send out to the board that would help us activate in a really targeted and effective way?
So now you're seeing the growing pains of the legislative committee right now, because we really haven't done that before. We've given positions on bills, we've written the occasional letter and sent emails. And, we've gone from 4 or 5 years ago, nothing, right? Really doing nothing, to really being active, where we're becoming a presence that's known up in Denver. So I was actually going to ask if you would consider kind of letting this go to the legislative committee meeting on Monday, 8:30. Welcome anybody to come with any ideas, and maybe we can brainstorm between now and then and see. Jessica can, and maybe we can brainstorm some ideas on a strategy when we have things like this before, because this isn't the first time this particular year bills have come up that we've really been active on. I will tell you, testimony matters. Chief Heber and I called in last week on a bill, on a safer neighborhood grant bill, which isn't a PPACG issue. It's more of a municipal issue. And we actually changed some of the committee members to, we're going to kill it in committee, to tabling it, to bringing it back this week to work on it some more. So it really does matter when we're testifying. And I think Dick can testify.
I'll make the point. I think it's very important for our legislative committee to maybe offer a proposal. We just need to, we probably have to do it promptly and make sure that we do act. And I have one other thing maybe for the legislative committee to address, and then Jessica, please, but just a second. And that is, what is the position of DRCOG on this? I mean, is there a way to maybe, I have to believe that at least some of the members of DRCOG are recognizing this is a serious problem too. And I wonder if we could join forces, and then they become a pathway to interact with the Denver legislators to say, hey, cut it out, just let this happen, or something to that effect. So is there a way to team up with DRCOG? So, oh yeah, sorry, Dick, please go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, the way CCI works is CCI takes a position, and of course, they've got a lot more money and staff to do a lot of the hard work and the bill drafting and all of that. My fire water bill has been just a huge amount of effort from them, and also from me. And, anybody that is really interested in this, follow the legislation and testify. It's becoming really easy to do. If you can't make it, you can do it through Zoom. You get 5 minutes to tell them why, and it does have a big impact. The more people we can get, the better off we are if it's something we want. And of course, if you take a position opposite of what PPACG says, you just don't ever say that PPACG is who you're representing yourself. So, that's the first thing. And the other thing on the Homestead exemption that you really have to be careful on is it is going to have a huge fiscal note, because It's the state backfilling the counties that is the issue. The county does not collect those taxes. Well, that's great, but the state backfills it. So when you double the exemption, you're doubling the amount of money that's coming out of the state, which is why you end up with some hesitancy on a lot of their parts because, where is the money coming from? Is it sustainable? And all those issues come up in any of the conversations.
I appreciate those additional insights. And sorry, Jessica, we held you up there, but go ahead. You had further comments.
That's all right. I do just want to add, so as we're all very interested in this, Jody did mention he is on Senator Liston's review committee as they're developing it next Tuesday on the 15th. So the legislative committee might want to wait until they see what they're talking about so that we've got the feeling and can move from a position of power for making amendments and building support. Because as we're looking at a non-existent bill, something right now, all we're saying is we know it's going to be something like the one that already died. So it's very important for us to engage and remember that these are important, just like all of the long-term care visitation issues. Our involvement's very important. And I can start including in those updates you get from me, hopefully you all read them, what bills are up in committee that week. And that we have support or opposed positions on.
Right, so we've actually changed the arrangement of our meetings. We used to go through pretty much all the bills every week, but it's gotten really cumbersome. So what we've done is we've changed our meetings so that at the beginning, we get a summary of like any new bills. And so we can, talk about them and take a position. Then we get a summary of any bills that are in committee that week. So that if we want to find out when they are, and if anybody wants to testify, that's at the top. And then if there's any change, we review any of the bills if we want to change any positions on them, like we did on that one at the last minute. So, and we really kind of are trying to streamline the meetings a little bit better so we can know when they're in committee a little bit faster. And, but what I want to discuss Monday is really not this bill, but also the process that we need to have in place for when this happens. And like I said, it's just part of the growing pains as you're developing and moving through.
Great, thank you. Well, we've got some great insights here from Commissioner Elsner and some of the background and the fact that Senator Liston is intending on reintroducing it and that Jody will be our voice into that. And perhaps there may be other PPACG voices as well. Here's an interesting scenario is let's get this planning done and my sense is that we've got a sentiment on this board to push for this, even knowing that round 2 is a 2/3 vote. Let's use this as an experiment to figure out how to do that. And that's going to mean, testimony, maybe teaming with Dr. Cog, maybe teaming with others. Let's give it a shot and see, what might work and learn some lessons from that. Maybe we achieve something, maybe we don't, but let's give it a try. And then pick up what we learned from that so that we can, we'll be judicious in using it in the future, but when we feel we need to use it, we'll have a sense of how to do it. Does that sound reasonable for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, that's super. Now, Andy, you mentioned there were a couple other bills you wanted to maybe also consider for more action.
Yes, sir. The 2 companion bills around visitation of seniors in long-term care facilities and in other hospital type settings. Those are real bills that are out there. And actually one of them, speaking to the testimony, does have an effect. One of those bills, for some reason, it got sent to a kill committee in the Senate, but that committee heard so much emotional and impactful testimony that it survived and it's moved forward. So one of them is Senate Bill 053. The other one is House Bill, the companion bill is 1199. And that's actually, the primary sponsor there is Representative Geithner from our county.
1199 in its 3rd reading. We heard that read last week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that one.
Okay, that's good to know. Senate Bill 53 is still out there. And those are 2, I think, given our conversation, we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but our roundtable discussion last week around long-term care issues, those are 2 tangible things we'd love to see get adopted. That would help that whole situation of seniors.
And while it's in its 3rd reading, you're not done until it's signed by the governor.
Yeah. Yep.
I'd say that those are both very interesting as well. I mean, the challenges we had about not being able to see your loved ones. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So if there's no objection from the board, maybe we can consider all three of these. Ask the legislative committee to consider all three of these and what path we should take. Is there any objection to that approach from any of the board members or any questions about that? All right, hearing none. I think that's the course of action for the legislative committee. Yes, we do. So thank you for the reminder. Outside of the comments that we just had, which were and testimony we had here, which was great. We still need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the legislative agenda.
And does that motion include changing item J to support with amendments?
It does.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I second it. Roland Gardine.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. A last opportunity for any of the board members to provide comments or ask questions. Please go
I'm
ahead.
just so excited to see so many board members active on this. I think back to when we started a few years ago, people would kind of yawn during it and didn't really care. And to me, this is just super exciting. So maybe I'm a political nerd, but thank you everybody for being so passionate and involved about this.
This is Yolanda. Who
I
made
really
the
specifically
motion?
remember that bill being read on the floor and it just breaking my heart. And afterwards, we had lunch with Senator Liston and Geithner, and we're talking about this. And he's on fire right now. He wants to work on this stuff. It's completely like the time is primed and the time is right going into assembly and in the midst of a legislative session. It's the perfect time for us. Why wouldn't we fix this?
Thank you very much. And I think I heard Councilwoman Avila making some comments and we kind of missed that. If you might repeat yourself, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't hear who made the motion and the second. And sometimes when people start speaking, they're not on a microphone, so it makes it really difficult to hear.
Thank you very much. Could someone refresh my memory on who made the motion in the second? And then we make sure that Councilwoman Avila knows.
Yolanda Glant Havener, I made the motion.
Roland Gardine, Mayor Pro Tem, seconded.
Okay, very good. Yolanda, did you hear that?
I did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much and appreciate your comment. Sometimes we've got a lot of passion here in the room and sometimes we don't get it into the microphone as good as we need to so people online can hear it. So appreciate your comment. All right, we have a motion and a second and they include the change of I to support with amendments. Any last questions or comments? All right, hearing none, let's proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And are there any opposed? All right, I hear no opposition, so I think we have those affirmed. And let us now proceed with item 5E, the board bylaw updates.
Thank you all. Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communication Manager again. So PPACG, you saw this last month as an information item. PPACG staff were directed to look at our Board of Directors bylaws to consider potential revisions. We wanted to make sure that they were up to date and correctly reflected the changes in practices caused by the pandemic, as well as ensuring all board roles were accurately represented. The board reviews the proposed changes last month and suggested alterations to the language regarding remote participation to strongly encourage in-person attendance. The language in the attached bylaw draft did include that. So the two changes that we are recommending in this document, okay, the three changes. The first one is under meeting participation, and it says board members are encouraged to attend in person but may participate remotely in PPACG board meetings to encourage regular participation by all members. We wanted to make sure that we continue to allow folks who could not be here the opportunity to engage and be members of the PPACG Board of Directors, but also to continue to encourage the interaction you get when you're in person. The second change, under notice of meeting, we moved our bulletin board downstairs rather than upstairs. So, and we wanted to add, as you voted on in your annual meeting, that one of the official sites is the PPACG website as well as that bulletin. And the third change that we are requesting is under legislative committee. And there are two changes within this. Right now, the bylaws say that the PPACG chair shall appoint a chair to the legislative committee. Our practice for the last several years has been that the legislative committee selects their own chair or co-chairs and votes upon those as a committee. So we wanted to just remove that section. Cleaning up language, developing position statements on proposed bills rather than either supporting or not supporting. And then the actual pertinent change is, again, putting into our bylaws what we have been doing in practice and have been practicing and have voted on, as this will be the practice of the legislative committee, just never incorporated it in the bylaws. And it says the legislative positions shall be moved forward to the board by a majority vote of the legislative committee and subject to the direction of the board on a 2/3 vote from the board of directors. So that was how legislative positions will actually be taken. And that is what the board has both agreed upon, has practiced, and has, in fact, I believe, voted on either 2 years ago or so. Does anybody have any questions, or did I miss anything in our discussions?
Yes, Mayor, please go ahead.
I just have, when I'm not a parliamentarian and I actually purchased Robert's Rules for Dummies, so I'm going through. All right. So anyways, I just don't know on section 6 at our notice of meeting, if we can have the word or in there. It's going to be online or on the bulletin board. Should that be an and, or? I think
I'll
it should
correct
be
that.
an and.
I do believe that was supposed to be and that is all me.
Excellent
So our
catch.
motion will say, approve the changes to the bylaws with the correction as stated by council member or Mayor Sharon.
That's okay.
Excellent. Are there any other questions or comments? That's one administrative change, but a very important one, actually. Any other questions or comments or recommended changes from any of the board members? Okay, I don't see any hands raised online, and I'm not seeing anything else here. So I appreciate the work that's been done on this, and I'll entertain a motion at this point.
Dave Donaldson, so moved.
Don Wilson, second.
Very good. And just a confirmation that the motion and the second does include this one word change from or to and in section 11.
I strongly support the change from or to and.
That is a very definitive statement. Thank you.
Same.
Okay, that's 2 strong supports for the amendment. All right, I think we're in good shape. One last opportunity for any of the board members with any questions or concerns. All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And are there any opposed? All right, that passes as well. Thank you, everybody. We are through our voting action items on item number 5. We're moving on to an information items, item 6, and the first one is 6A.
Sure, and I'll kick this off as Jody makes his way up to the podium. Just want to thank the board for the great conversation last week around senior issues in long-term care facilities. By my count, I think we had 10 board members attend and a bunch of community, other stakeholders that have a vested interest in long-term care facilities. Jessica's handing out a summary of the meeting last week, the roundtable discussion, along with, we've got a list of potential action items, next steps that Jody's going to sort of walk us through as well. But as you heard last month, there was a pretty dire issue that our seniors have been dealing with. So we appreciate everybody's really prompt attention to help us dig into this and figure out where we go from here. So with that, Jody, take it away.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Your Area Agency on Aging Director here with PPACG. I just wanted to share a huge thanks and shout out to those board members who were able to attend with us in person or online last Wednesday at the Long-Term Care Roundtable. As we noted during that meeting, it's the first of many conversations, and so we certainly appreciate your time with us. We also recognized members of Department of Human Services, Adult Protection Services, members of state level government offices, Colorado Department of Human Services, and many, many others that were in the room. We also had a family member who provided testimony. We also had a former staff member of a long-term care community provide testimony, along with Adult Protective Services and several others that were here to provide input through the public comment period. So with the information that we heard, the internal team has come up, developed some recommended next steps or action items, which should be part of your packet there. Our goal ultimately is to continue to raise awareness. To do that, we are recommending, and we'll be putting together a letter to governor's office, in particular, Mr. Jarrett Hughes, who was on the meeting for the full 2 hours. He is the senior policy advisor on aging in the governor's cabinet. We're also recommending a letter to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. They did have a representative on the meeting. For the bulk of the time, he had to step off at the very end. We're also intending to conduct and schedule ongoing conversations with additional stakeholders, including hospitals, fire departments, et cetera, that are seeing and witnessing some of the same issues. And the goal there is just to continue adding to the information that we've been able to secure so far. We also, with the participation of Commissioner Vanderwerf in his new role, schedule a meeting with the Colorado Board of Health. And so we would like to take advantage of you in that new position. Also, continuing as the discussion was earlier, more advocacy around the state legislation. So SB 2253 and HB 221199, which you heard around today and have voted on. Thank you very much. So we can continue to check these off our list, but also really brainstorming with other advocates across the state. As you know, or maybe don't, I don't know. There are 16 area agencies on aging across the state of Colorado, and all of these are seen across all these, the entire state. So this is not a Pikes Peak region issue. It is a state and national issue, as I mentioned in my opening statements last week. Exploring possibility of the COVID relief funding. AAA has a specific ARPA fund that will be used across the next 2.5 years. So there's potential there. Engaging with the Pikes Peak Workforce Center. A big part of the conversation last week was around the challenges in workforce right now in long-term care communities. And so we want to make sure that we're including that in part of the conversations. We already, we already have a good working relationship with Adult Protective Services, but we want to ensure that we're continuing to engage with them. Part of their challenges are also related to workforce issues. And so we want to make sure that we are keeping them in part of our conversations. A big part of the conversation towards the end came out around training opportunities, and we have staff to do that. And so looking at developing and offering trainings to the community regarding residents' rights, that's actually a part of the role of our ombudsman staff. And so this is a nice opportunity for us to engage them in that way. And we have space, and we have hybrid, and we have the tools. And so why wouldn't we? So that is something that we're going to be looking at establishing. Also developing some surveys to solicit some additional feedback related to the issues that we heard and that we continue to see. So everything from workers in long-term care facilities, suggestions for improvement, but also engaging our long-term facility staff. That is going to be very important that we raise those conversations and engage them in those conversations. This is not something that we can do in a silo. So we want to make sure that we're putting that on paper and committing to that. Some of the last a couple of recommendations that actually came from some of our board members included development and use of incentivization to encourage family-centered operations. Don't really know what that would look like, but it came up as a really good conversation piece. And so we're going to explore a little bit more around that. Also exploring nationwide best practices and what other communities may be doing well in these arenas. And then I would open the conversation, as this is an information item, I would encourage ongoing communication and participation from you as our board of directors, and as we work together to raise awareness. So
Yes, so please go ahead.
And I'm sorry, I could not be present at that roundtable last week, but this looks like a lot of good conversation. I'm just prompted of a memory that came up, and I haven't thought about this in probably 3 or 4 years ago. In my neighborhood, there was an attempt to get, and I can't even remember what the project was called, but I'm hoping somebody here knows. It was based on a national model where basically people in a neighborhood, a distinct neighborhood, sign up to be kind of on call for seniors, and you know what I'm talking about.
I do know
What
exactly
is-
what's it. It was the Age Friendly Neighbor Project.
Yes,
Yes,
and what?
there's a full, much longer name, but I do know the person who
Yeah,
headed
but
that up
it's
for a
just
while.
something tanked it, and I don't know what tanked it. And do you know why it?
I don't
Okay.
know how.
It
why
seemed like a
ended
great
up.
model. I actually went to a meeting on it, and I don't know if that's just one that might be worth our considering how we could support something like that.
Well, and I know that some comments that I have. So first off, just to start off, I was officially confirmed to the Colorado Board of Health on Monday. That's when the Senate voted on it. And my next Board of Health meeting is Wednesday next week. In a previous Board of Health meeting, I asked them to take up fentanyl. So I believe that is agendized for this meeting. But in my comments in next week's Board of Health, I'll ask them to take up this issue in a future state Board of Health meeting. And I think our operative question for them, right? They've been so focused on COVID, and I don't know if this is true or not, but we'll give them give CDPHE an opportunity to respond to this. Is there something that they've been doing less with regard to their inspection requirements of our senior healthcare facilities? Because I believe they have that as an obligation. I think they've got a division up there that actually does the inspections. And is there something that they've been, unable to do because of COVID? And can we get that back to where it used to be, or maybe even figure out a way to improve it? Because I think that's a little bit of really just kind of making sure that all of these facilities just stay on board with their statutory and moral obligations. So I'll just ask them to take that up in a future meeting, and then we'll see. They responded very well to my request for the fentanyl presentation. So I think they would probably respond well to this, and then we'll get a dialogue going. And I think that'll be very useful. And I have to tell you, appreciate Jody, you're bringing up this concept about family support. Yeah, I do feel so strongly about this, that we've drifted away from families helping their own family members. And we've been thinking more about institutionalized and government approaches, and they don't necessarily always go down the right path. The best way to ensure a person is loved as they age is for their family to do it. So I'm really, really interested in, is there a way we can improve that, or engage in that, or help people do it better, or whatever? I don't know the answer. Just like you said, don't know the answer, but that's a very interesting and important question for me. So
thank you.
Any other comments or questions from any of the members of the board on this item? It was a great meeting, and it was emotional too, by the way.
Jody, Martha Barton was in that project, and Nancy Lippincott. Those two names just came to me. So at least I've got some names. They will know. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other comments or questions with regard to the follow-up item 6A?
What was the second name, Nancy? Lippincott. Okay. I know the name. I haven't met her, but I do know Martha Barton.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's no objection, shall we go to 6B?
Sure. And we're going to keep the conversation going. We'll keep you posted on next steps. And yeah, appreciate your support on this.
Great.
Good.
6B, please.
Paul Rochette, our military planning program manager, is going to give an update on a lot of stuff we've been doing in the wildfire mitigation space.
Good morning, everyone. Just since we Microphone, yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Since we have some new board members, I'll give you just a very brief overview of our program. It's called the JLUS program, Joint Land Use Study. It's formally been changed to a compatible use study, but we still use the terms JLUS. This is our third grant. The first two were really identification of issues. The purpose of the grant is to deal with the military-civilian interface issues. And for this grant, we really have four areas that we're focusing on. One is an energy resiliency study for the Peterson, Schriever, Cheyenne Mountain Garrison. One's improved access to Peterson on the north end. One is to deal with stormwater issues along Monument Creek through USAFA. And the fourth is wildfire mitigation. And that's what I want to update you on right now. So in the last few months, we've moved from kind of the organizational phase where we bring everybody together that is concerned about wildfire, and that includes state and federal forest service, fire protection districts, municipalities, the sheriff's office, Pikes Peak Office of Emergency Management, and others. And we've recently, in February, the preliminary work that we've been doing came together, and we presented a funding report that really examines the money that we expect to be available either through existing state or federal sources, as well as money that we think will be coming through the IIJA. And we also presented to the overall wildfire mitigation team a series of GIS maps that we put together to help identify where projects should be. And finally, we discussed how do we approach this with the whole WUI is a little too large to deal with. So we proposed to break it into some sub areas, and the group agreed to that. We've got 3 or 4, depending on whether Schriever will move that direction or not, that are anchored by military installations. And then there's several others that could exist that are not anchored by military installations. So a week ago on Monday, we had our meeting of the north sub area, which is anchored by USAFA. And we brought in state and federal forest service, City of Colorado Springs, of course, USAFA, Tri-Lakes, Woodland Valley, and the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, and discussed, should we be going after some of these funding sources in order to do wildfire mitigation? And it turns out many of the participants aren't quite ready yet. So it's been decided that we need to examine whether we develop a community-wide protection plan. And what that means, I'm still learning whether we need to go for grant funding for that, whether we can do it in-house, whether it goes through FEMA, whether it already exists. There's still a lot of unknown. The next day, I spent 3 days, next 3 days, I spent down at Fort Carson. They were doing a climate resiliency planning charrette. I made a presentation on the wildfire mitigation effort, and working with their fire department, they're going to be introducing me to all of their southern partners down 115, south of Fort Carson, back up by 25 to Fountain. And we're going to look at, what do we want to do in that area? Can we bring forth some funding requests, or do we need to do a CWPP as well? And then I'll be putting together, I'll be introducing the fire chief at Cheyenne Mountain with the City of Colorado Springs fire staff, and so that we can coordinate the 2D efforts with the efforts that we're engaged with, and then move forward. And then this week on Monday, I had a meeting with USAFA and the city specifically, because those are the two that have projects ready to go, and they concur that we need a CWPP before we move forward. So we're moving from that storming and norming stage into the implementation stage, where we need to prepare the documents that will be needed to successfully receive grants, whether the federal or state grants, to actually go and mitigate either forest land or grasslands around Fort Carson. So that's kind of where we're at.
Great, thank you. I've got a couple of comments, just some updates. So in the 2022 budget for the county, we allocated $100,000 for forest fire risk mitigation for county parks. Some of those parks are in Black Forest. And we don't want to get a fire started, do the best we can to not get a fire started from a county park and then harm residents. But that also includes Bear Creek Park, which is surrounded by the city. And that actually will help in reducing reducing fire risk in the city as well. But we did approve that. Also, we took, I forget the name of the federal legislation that's providing a bunch of firefighting or fire risk mitigation funding. But we took a proposal to the National Association of Counties legislative convention in February, and the position was asking them to put 10% of that multi-billion-dollar program into a sub-program where they would allocate those funds directly in partnerships with counties and local governments for the primary purposes of dealing with large WUIs, where we have large populations and large forests. That we took that to committee at NACO, and that was voted unanimously in favor. And that is now officially a National Association of Counties position.
Okay, all right.
So the person that can give you the specific wording is Ryan Parcell in the county. So if I would ask you to reach out to him and get that wording, that's now a national position. And this is some of the efforts that the county is doing to deal with wildfire risk mitigation.
Okay.
So those are the 2 points that I wanted to make up on this.
Thank you.
Give to you on this.
For sure.
Are there other questions on this topic from anybody? Anybody online? All right, very good. Thank you for the update. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Donaldson.
Were you able to attend the new fire mitigation board? Actually, I'm forgetting the title of it, which was created with by the mayor with the $20 million.
Yes, I attended the first meeting and I'd applied to be on that board, and because they're limited positions, I'd probably serve better as a liaison with the wildfire staff. I work a lot with Corey Ashby and Ashley Whitworth. So I don't attend those meetings, or I haven't been invited to those meetings, but I do coordinate through the fire department staff.
Okay. From what I heard there, it sounds like you were at that meeting. I think it would be real productive if PPACG is closely tied in, even if it's not a official seat on the board, with that fire mitigation board.
Yes, and I do. I'm not sure if we should ask the mayor again if we should formally be on that committee and attend, or whether just working through Brett Lacey's staff is adequate. But I'm working with Brett Lacey's staff.
It's only a quarterly meeting,
right?
So even if it's not as a formal member, I think it's real worthwhile to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would suppose maybe, I don't know if there's an opportunity for PPACG to become an ex officio member, so officially a member but not a voting member, and then be part of the conversation. Maybe that's a possibility.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like us to be in closer working relationship with the city on that. There's so many opportunities to leverage one another's efforts. So yeah, we'll be there one way or another. Yep.
Okay, great.
Great. Any other questions or comments on this topic? All right, hearing none, let's move on to item 6C, our faster funding with Cdot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. By way of background, faster funds come through the state, and I believe it's part of your vehicle renewal process. You pay into the faster fund, and then that goes out. Faster funds are distributed to projects based on Performance Directive 14. That's where the Transportation Commission has said, based on certain analytics, this is how we're going to decide how these projects go. So obviously there are some fund sources that we get a certain apportionment of, and we have a decision make, but these are funds that are directly related to need. So they go to projects based on need, so pavement and other things, all based on the condition of the roadway or safety conditions. So that's how faster funds are distributed. So back in November, our Transportation Advisory Committee, or TAC, looked at some faster projects and approved them, but we sort of set them off to the side until we had some of these other things work out. We're now ready to come back to you today. This is an information item. Shane's going to give you I think it's 3 or 4 projects, kind of an overview. They will come back to you at a later date within probably a tip amendment. Although I think if CDOT needs that as a vehicle, we could bring it as a separate item. But I think at this point, this is your information item. So they're sort of on your radar screen, you know what they are. But then they'll probably come back to you embedded within a tip amendment at a future date. So again, this is your opportunity to sort of know they're out there and ask questions. So Shane, and Andy does give a prize for the manager has the shortest agenda item. So don't blow this for me.
No pressure. No. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you.
There might in fact be no pressure because John might have already blown it just with the introduction. So.
So in your packet, towards the bottom of the packet, I forget what page number, Jessica, you might be able to scroll to it, is our faster and HSIP spreadsheet. Is a tracking mechanism we keep within CDOT to track our fiscal year, the projects and the funding amount. What I'm going to talk about today is really, and this spreadsheet also reflects all the planning areas, not just PPACG, but PACG as well as the TPRs. But very to the very right in that dark blue column is our fiscal year 26 plan. And within PPACG, we have four projects that we're going to talk about. 2 of them are approved grant applications, and then the 2 that are in gray are not approved as of yet. They are still being reviewed by headquarters. So the first one is South Powers Median Barrier. That's going to be a project that is south of Airport Road. We're going to look at the median area and go ahead and design a median barrier within that area to prevent crossover. The second one down, which is about 6.99 or 699,000, and then 87,000 for both construction and design is. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Actually, the next one down is US 24 and Judge Orr Road, which is about $6.3 million in fiscal year 26, and that is allocated more towards the construction of this project. This project has already got funding allocated for design and right-of-way in fiscal year 24, and this really covers that construction component or portion of that construction component. The project scope at 24 and Judge Orr is realignment. That project or that location's got a really high skew, if you're familiar with that location. The next project down, which is in the gray, is the MLK Martin Luther King bypass median barrier. That starts on I-25 and heads east towards Chelton, where within areas within that location, we're going to look at improvements for the median barrier, again, to prevent crossover traffic. And then the last project, which is also in the gray, is the US 24 Green Mountain Falls location. And that's really looking at acceleration and deceleration lanes as you turn into that location on US 24. Again, those are both, the gray ones are still pending, but the other 2 on the top are monies that we will go ahead and tip within fiscal year 26. Any questions?
Any questions for any of those items on 6C, the faster funding projects? Yes,
This is
please go ahead.
Yolanda.
Oh, please, Yolanda, go ahead.
Airport and what? I put it in the chat, but it's south of Airport, one of the projects. And can you give me a cross
Could you
street?
give the reference again, Airport and what?
Grinnell, it's close to Airport, or it's Powers and Grinnell area would be the location of this median barrier. So it's just south, about half a mile to a mile of Airport and Powers.
Okay, will it be east or west of Powers?
It's the median, and so it'll go right in the middle.
Okay, right in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Very good. Nancy?
Yeah, and Yolanda, the other one was Martin Luther King bypass as well. I don't know if you caught that one. I think
I did.
also.
I totally
Okay.
caught it, but it's
Got
in
it.
the gray area,
Yeah,
right?
it
Right,
is. Yeah.
That is correct.
So my question is just a process one and how these are selected. If you could just real quickly say how these are selected.
That's a great question. I don't know if Rich wants to chime in a little bit, but I know it's basically based off of need when it comes to traffic incidents, whether it's fatalities, side swipes, crossovers. And so we look at and try to identify some of our high fatality or high cost areas. For an example would be I-25, where a few years back we started and moved all the way down almost to the El Paso County line, putting in cable barrier on that corridor just to prevent those crossovers. That was faster funded as well.
Yeah, and as Shane said, there's a lot of criteria, but there's also a benefit cost analysis that goes along with that to look at it. So we're trying to maximize benefit cost for some improvements. So
And I have a, thank you, and I have a question as well, and that's, I think you mentioned, last one was Green Mountain Falls area.
Yes.
And I guess I'd just like to know where that intersection is.
Oh, you're gonna ask that question.
Yeah, it's not the Cascade intersection that we worked on previously, and this is a follow-on to that.
No, it would not. I
Okay.
don't believe there's currently there's no signalized location here. It's
Yeah.
um,
So it's
and
it's
it
extending
is
the
acceleration, deceleration. So if you can-
acceleration and deceleration lane.
Correct, providing that right turn, so getting outside of that traffic, so you can make that turn into the Green Mountain Falls area.
Okay, yeah, I know that there's some places there where the lanes are not long, the deceleration. Okay, so that will be in that area. And for your awareness, now I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be interacting with some paving that the county is going to be doing, but it won't be. So down in Chapita Park, we're going to be paving a piece of road down there. The county will be doing that. That's part of road that needs to have some work done, but that's, I don't know, a mile or two south of where you're at.
Yeah, and this is currently design funding.
Okay.
And so looking at the total amount that we have, I think it's 699,000. There'll be right away in design incorporated, and then any carryover going to construction further down the line. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on this item 6C? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, let's move on to the reports, and we start off with military installation reports, so 7A. And who do we have online at this point from our distinguished military bases? Colonel Jung?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, board members. Now, I don't have too much to report today. We're, of course, getting ready for the possibility of snow this afternoon and evening. We'll see how that goes. But just in terms of big events, our annual NCLS event was a great success. And a lot of those presentations that were held are available on YouTube for anyone that might be interested in viewing the TED Talk live sessions and the many great speakers that we had. And then now we're transitioning to our graduation prep, which will be our primary focus over the next few months. So pending any questions, thank you for the opportunity to participate today.
Thank you very much, Colonel. I mean, just as I know that it rotates around, but who will be the speaker at graduation this year? I know sometimes it's the president, sometimes the vice president, and sometimes the secretary of defense. Do you know which one it will be this graduation?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not the president.
Okay, so it'll be the secretary or the vice, maybe.
Likely, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Any other questions for Colonel Jung from the Air Force Academy? And seeing none, thank you very much. Who else? Okay, Mr. Arnold. There we go.
So my apologies, was having a little bit of technical trouble. Really not much in the way of updates from Peterson. Like the community, we have seen a great drop in COVID cases, which is really, really good news. So for anybody visiting the installation, masks are not required, but I do just want to let folks know out there, one of the challenges we're having is they still, just like in the community, masks are still required in our medical facilities. So just want to brief that. Again, otherwise, not a ton for the group today. So just standing by for any questions that you may have for the team at Peterson and for Schriever.
Yes, thank you very much. Looks like we've got one question from Mr. Donaldson. Go ahead.
Yeah, Chuck, thanks for that information. And, you know, I was out at Carson, I think last week, and at the PX, they call them PXs over there, not BXs. And the cashiers still had their, masks on, and we had a little talk, and they wondered about, now that the CDC has said, hey, Colorado's a state where you don't need to wear the masks. Do you know, has that changed just over the last week, where at the AFES facilities that's not required, or is it going to change soon, or do you have awareness of that?
So not tracking in a regular meeting, in fact, met this morning with the AFES leadership and also with the DECA leadership on base. I don't believe they're requiring masks for their people. I think their folks are just wearing that personal preference. So I don't believe so, but I would have to check on that. I know I was at the Base Exchange yesterday, and the cashiers were not wearing them at the Base Exchange itself. So,
Okay, yeah, and things changed pretty quickly there over the last week or two. So maybe this week they're not doing it. Thanks.
yeah, they really have. You know, we kind of phased back into this for the first day or two, and then because what happened initially with the Air Force is we're a little slower sometimes to get guidance through OSD and then to Air Force and through Air Force channels, but we actually got it fairly quickly this time. So we may have gotten the guidance to go ahead and remove the masks at our internal facilities a little quicker than Fort Carson. Normally it takes the Air Force lags, and in this case, they got the guidance out almost immediately within 24 hours of the broader changes. So we may be a little bit ahead of Fort Carson last week.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Arnold? All right. Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Appreciate the quick update. Do we have anybody else from any of the military bases? And I think we might have covered everybody at this point. And we would have left would be Fort Carson. And Mr. Popert. Mr. Popert, are you there? Looks like he's trying to speak because I see that light going on, but we're not hearing you, sir. I don't know if we've got a technical difficulty there. It looks like we do. Okay, thanks. Oh, and he is saying he's got audio difficulties. All right, I'll tell you what, we'll move on. Mr. Popert, if you get those resolved, just please chime in and we'll let you provide an update. Let's continue on through the reports. So 7B through 7G are in the minutes. We have our Cdot monthly update on 7H.
All right, I'll kick this off, then I'm going to turn it over to Shane Ferguson to give a project update. So to circle back on our previous agenda topic, I know the question came up about how are we covering O&M right now on our transit services that Cdot operates. So I was able to get an answer to that from our Director of Transit and Rail. So we have been using faster transit funding, as well as some FTA funding to cover those O&M costs. We're currently forecasted to be in deficit as soon as later this year. And so the funding we're looking at taking off the top out of transit is to supplement those funding amounts that we've previously been using in order to cover the deficit. So hopefully that answers that particular question right now. Beyond that, Cdot activities, I think everybody's well aware of everything we've been working on. Greenhouse gas rules being one. The rules were passed in December. Everybody is aware of that. I'm now working on implementation of those, developing the policy and procedural directives that are going to go along with those to provide more detail about how the process will actually work and how the bottling will actually work. So that's large ongoing efforts going to be happening over the next couple of months. I think the timeline is desired to have something in place around the late April, May timeframe with regard to those policy and procedural directives. Of course, the other big item is the 10-year plan. I think everybody's well aware of what we're doing in that regard. You folks have adopted your capital list essentially already. We had a lot of conversation about transit this morning, and then we need to approve the combined list hopefully sometime next month. So those are probably the biggest activities that CDOT's working on right now. Shane, I'll turn it over to you to give a project update.
All right. Good morning. Project update for PPACG. So first one I'll talk about is the MAMSIP project, the Military Access Mobility and Safety Improvements. That's the one on I-25.
Excuse me, please. Can
Yes,
you
sir.
speak up a little bit? I can't hear you. Thank you.
All right. How's that? All right. The first one I'll talk about would be the MAMSIP project, the Military Access Mobility and Safety Improvement Project. That's the one on I-25 as well as Charter Oaks Ranch Road in 94. We're progressing through with just getting our construction and our lane shifts prepared for later in the spring and early in the summer, where a lot of that shifting will go to the northbound lanes. So that work is progressing well for at least the I-25. And then as well as for Charter Oaks Ranch Road and State Highway 94, it's the utility work currently going on to get that project prepared for later in the spring as well, when we start moving ground and earthwork and that type of activity. Research and powers has progressed well as well. We have the girders are set on that bridge. The earthwork is primarily taken care of, and so hoping for better weather here very soon to start making more activity on that project and finish up later in the year, probably in the fall. We'll see how weather and everything else goes, especially coming up. A couple of projects that are going to go out to advertisement, US 285 and State Highway 9 and Fairplay. That project is out for advertisement currently and expecting bids to be opened the next week. So we'll see how that comes in. And then the State Highway 115 project is going to go out for advertisement on March 24th. We have a 3-week advertisement period for that. And then we'll find out how the bids open on that project. On the design side, we've started the design for the airport and Powers interchange. We expect to have that design complete likely early next summer. And any questions?
Any questions from any of the members of the board? All right, thank you very much for the CDOT update. I do see that Mr. Popard has I think he still has audio difficulties, but he has a note here in chat. Thanks, heads up on Powers Airport interchange in preliminary design. We'll be meeting next week with engineer for coordination and timeline. So thank you for that input. All right, let's continue on then. How about the stack update?
Commissioner Williams is not here today, and I didn't see Commissioner Stone sign on either, so third string, but
Wow, just like high school all over again.
You're just getting beat up today,
I
John.
know, yeah.
You know, the great thing is we're always doing it with a smile.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, at the STAC meeting last month, I think the major item of concern, or the main thing that we talked about, was the fiscal constraint, or again, how the city how the state maintains financial equity amongst the different CDOT regions. And so there was a long discussion on that. The upshot of it is that they basically, the 10% we've been talking about for transit, there was an original sort of discussion of should we remove that 10% minimum transit allocation and just have all of the projects sort of in there. That did not have a lot of support statewide, so it maintained at the 10%. And then there was the other discussion of how the equity comes about. And there was a discussion whether we want to use the regional priority project, or RPP midpoint formula, or something different. And they ended up back on that midpoint formula. So that was the main discussion there. There was another item on electrification, and there was a very interesting, actually, transportation funding 101. In fact, now that I think about it, we might actually grab that PowerPoint and send it out to everybody, because it was pretty interesting. And so that was the items for the last STAC meeting. This coming week, we'll have another report on the GHG mitigation measures. And there will also be a discussion, as Rich has already mentioned, on the equity within the transit formula, and whether or not the Mustang Outrider is taken off the top. So that should be another spirited discussion. Any questions of what happened at STAC that I can deflect maybe to Commissioner Elsner?
All right, any questions? You did mention the greenhouse gas part, and I think you did send it out to everybody, Andy, the letter we got from CDPHE, their interest in enthusiastically supporting us and helping with the research, and the word enthusiastic was used, to try to get an exceptional event waiver from the EPA for the couple months last summer when we did not meet our ozone air quality requirements. So that particular letter is pretty interesting. We're going to get support from the state. We know that it's a difficult path, and EPA is not always inclined to grant those, but we're going to take a shot at it. But you mentioned greenhouse gas, and I think everybody's gotten a copy of that. We have a couple of questions, but if I might, I think Commissioner Elsner had his hand raised, and then Nancy will come to you.
Yeah,
Go
I was
ahead,
just
Dick.
going to say, I did hear John. I think it was a check to see if I was paying attention to what he was saying. And I did hear that, John, and I will get even.
Bear down.
Very good. All right, Nancy, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to actually read an email that Annie Oatman Gardner sent me this morning in our conversation. She was online, and it's in regards to the O&M. And I just thought it would be helpful to hear her perspective. She said, "It sounds like putting operations and maintenance into the 10% capital is great. the system could never get O&M before, only capital. So the system could buy buses, but never have enough to operate it, i.e. more routes. So I think in the long run, and Stan alluded to this, it makes the system actually more sustainable. They can always use it for capital, buying buses, but don't have to. It may mean less, but actually just means more flexibility from my previous understanding on how this works. Anyway, I think this is a good thing. The Fed's allowing more for operations rather than relying on local dollars, which are pretty sparse.
Thank you for reading that. Appreciate that very much. Yes, John.
And just in quick response to that, the technical answer is maybe. What she's saying is true for federal dollars. When federal transit dollars come in, that come from the 5307, 5309 sort of pots. But what we're talking about is the state transit dollars that are coming in, and those state transit dollars have a little bit more flexibility, and they were using those dollars for operations, maintenance and operations in the past. So to quote President Reagan, trust but verify. So our line of questioning during STAC will be Mustang and Outrider had operated for several years prior to now. And so we just want to understand what happened to the previous funding stream. If those funding streams were connected to something that went away, like SB1 or something, then this is a very appropriate conversation. And I totally agree with what she's saying. We need to take those off the top and provide them. But if the funds got moved someplace else, then we have a lot of other questions as to the appropriateness of the action. So that's why I'm saying we have to sort of see where this all lies. It might be this might be a very good idea, but it also might be sort of they've moved some stuff around, and we just want to make sure that we have full disclosure of the finance. We're looking out for
Fair
you.
enough.
We really are.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Did you have a follow-on comment, Nancy? Nope. Good. Okay, great. All right. Anything else on stack then at this point? All right. Hearing none. I think Andy, you're up on your executive director's report.
Through the chair's prerogative, stole my thunder. The only thing I was going to mention was the board authorized a letter that we submit to the state last month around our ozone numbers for the regions not meeting the federal EPA standards around ozone lately. So appreciate the board's support in drafting that letter and getting that sent off to CDPHE. And we actually got a pretty prompt response, came back last Thursday, I think it was. And very, very, very promising. There's no guarantee that EPA, who's the final authority on this, is going to give us that waiver for exceptional events from the 3 biggest wildfires in state history in 2020. So I think it's important that we show a united front between the state, CDPHE, and our region approaching EPA and having the data to support that request. So the state, CDPHE, says they're spending money, committing resources. They've hired a consultant to dig into our issue. They're developing data and the other technical analysis to really support our request. And it's rare that you see a state agency say they're enthusiastically supporting us with something, but that's what they said. So we really appreciate that. It's not a done deal yet. They want to see what that report comes back with as far as the numbers that they're digging into, but they seem committed to helping us down this path. So I think it's a really promising first step. What I'd like to do is maybe bring back at next month's board meeting related to this, some conversations we've been having with the Air Quality Technical Committee and some other folks around some other proactive measures, voluntary measures that we could take as a region. The state referenced that as well in their response back to us. They said they really appreciate what the region's been doing already to try to manage our emissions with the stuff that's within our control. We've been having some follow-on conversations with the Air Quality Committee around some other things that we could do to try to not just show the state and the feds that we're trying to do what we can, but it's also the right thing to do to try to bring down emissions because it is a public health issue as well. So I'll probably schedule that for board discussion next month and dig into these other ideas a little bit further. Okay.
Thank you, Andy. And just maybe for clarification to our colleague from Manitou Springs, I don't know if you had been privy to some of the previous conversations about why we were requesting a waiver, but yeah. Excellent. So, it just has to do with pollution that passed through our way from other places that we have no control over. And if we can't get the EPA to address that with us, we could end up being penalized, costing us money, causing all kinds of other problems for something we can't control. So, okay, thank you. I'm glad that you have a good understanding of that, because I know that Manitou Springs is one of those places that's pretty sensitive to air pollution. Yeah, thank you. Okay, very good. So let's go around the table, member entity announcements, and with your permission, let's start with anybody online that would like to make an announcement. Is anybody online that's a board member that would like to make any announcements at this point?
This is Yolanda.
Please go
And,
ahead.
well, I remember we used to make announcements about fairs in our different areas and just what was going on. So I wanted to share that this month is Women's History Month, and the Downtown Partnership in cooperation with the museum, Pioneers Museum, put up 12 women banners, pictures of banners along Pikes Peak Avenue between Cascade and Nevada. And my mom is one of those people that has a banner up there. And so I'm very proud of that. And it talks about her contribution to the city in bringing dance and festival music to the area. And on Saturday, the Pioneers Museum is going to feature all 12 women between 2 and 3 p.m. So you can just sign up there. And it's an array, it's a very diverse group of women that are being celebrated. And I think that to get on there, you have to have passed away. And so that's pretty exciting for me. But I'd invite you all to go to the museum and check out the fantastic women that came before us.
Well, thank you, Yolanda. Appreciate the update and congratulations to your mom.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. Any other updates from anybody else that's online? All right, hearing none. How about around the horn? Any other updates, yeah, please?
Sure, and I'm glad Yolanda said that, because I was going to mention that as well. And I'll be there at the Pioneer Museum in the afternoon, and I will also be at the Pioneer Museum from 11 to 12, or I believe with you, Stan, and we're going to be on a government panel that Kono is supporting on local government. There will be just kind of a local government affairs conversation with the community. Stan and I will be on that panel. And so I'll be spending the day at the Pioneer Museum downtown.
Great. Thank you very much for that update. Done? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
I want to tell you guys, thank you, man, for giving me the education last week on the roundtable and the breakfast. But that actually, man, was very informative. That was the first time I've ever been in a Capitol building. I thought it was pretty cool.
Thank you. I remember our conversation up there, and you're being very appreciative of that. And I think that's great. And, you know, that is the people's house. We own that house. It's important to go there and see it and interact with the folks there. So thanks for coming. Yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that Manitou, we did lift our mask mandate last month, and I want to give a shout out to the El Paso County Health Department for, we were able to break out data on Manitou specifically, which really informed our decision both to implement the mask mandate as well as to lift it. So unfortunately, they've changed their reporting now, so we no longer have access to that data, but it was great. We had it when we needed it, so that was good. I also wanted to let you know that we're in the very early conceptual stages of looking at bringing in an electric trolley into Manitou. You're all very familiar, I'm sure, with our parking and transportation issues within Manitou. So we've been talking with Estes Park about their successful model. And so again, very, very early stages, but it's we'll see where it goes. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, one of the things that I've always thought would be really cool would be a trolley of some type on wheels, not on rails, but something on wheels that goes from downtown Colorado Springs to Manitou that could serve two purposes: for people to move back and forth because of their business, daily business, but also to serve as a kind of a component of this being a tourist destination, and allows people to maybe go from Manitou to the Olympic Museum or something like this. So,
And of course, that model is in place currently with the Creative District on First Friday. So there's a shuttle that goes between the creative districts in Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs. So
great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Look forward to seeing what the trolley will look like, I hope.
we're not there yet.
Okay.
It's very expensive.
All right. Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the board know a while back, the town of Monument and some neighboring water districts presented to this board a renewable water project. We are working with Mr. Gunning now to bring that project back for some updates. This is the Loop Water Project that will supply not only North El Paso County, but many other areas with renewable water. So we look forward to bringing that back to you guys.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for that. And I have a quick update. This is the county has finalized its ARPA funding allocations into the broad categories. And some of these categories we've already had announcements, and they relate to the economic development side, where we've provided substantial numbers of grants for companies to survive COVID. But a lot of the other things that we had not had a chance to get to related to, excuse me just a second, get that turned off. Related to some of the other areas where ARPA funding is approved. So I'll just give these numbers, but it is available on the El Paso County website, and we can send the link. But we're investing $6 million in broadband, 20 million in water infrastructure, 9 million in community impact, which were the funds that were recently allocated a couple of weeks ago, $10 million in additional road infrastructure, $15 million in stormwater infrastructure. We'll have a total of 16 million for public health, half of which was spent last year, the remainder this year. And then 23 million was for economic recovery and workforce development, most of which is already spent. And then 34 million for public safety, and that was predominantly around our sheriff's office, with a large percentage of that spent on the jail, which was absolutely not even remotely close to being COVID safe. So a lot of that was spent on a lot of readjustment in the jail, and then some other small things which are administrative and so forth. So those are the big numbers. I'd say, you know, the biggest interest ones, and the ones that have not been the funds that have not been consumed and will have projects and project evaluations on where to spend these dollars, is the water infrastructure, the road infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure, those three main areas. So wanted to give you what those numbers are, so you have a broad brush understanding of those. And we've got a pie chart in case anybody's interested. We can get that to you, and you can see where the numbers are. That's the only update I have. One last call. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up? All right, hearing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Great meeting, everybody. And thanks so much for your participation. All right. All right, Don.